I was halfway through my presentation when my VP, Douglas Hartwell, cleared his throat and interrupted me. Our biggest client, Marcus Henley, from Henley Automotive Group, sat across the table with his CFO. Douglas smiled coldly and announced that this was my last project with the company, that they were letting me go. The room went silent. Marcus stared at me, his expression unreadable. After dessert, as everyone stood to leave, Marcus leaned close and whispered, "Can we talk outside?" The Chicago wind bit through my blazer as I followed Marcus onto the restaurant patio. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't sure if it was from the cold or the shock of what had just happened inside. Marcus turned to face me, his gray eyes studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. "I need you to tell me something honestly," he said, his voice low enough that the CFO, who had followed us out, had to step closer to hear. "Was that campaign in there your work?" I blinked at him, confused by the question. Of course it was. I've been working on the Henley rebrand for 8 months. Every strategy point, every demographic analysis, every creative direction came from my team. From me. Marcus exchanged a glance with his CFO, a sharp woman named Diane who had been taking notes throughout the entire lunch. She raised one eyebrow, and Marcus nodded slightly, as if they were having a silent conversation I wasn't privy to. "That's interesting," Marcus said slowly. "Because 3 days ago, Douglas called me personally. He told me you were leaving the firm for personal reasons. Family issues," he said. He explained that he had personally developed the campaign strategy and wanted to present it to me as a smooth transition. He said he'd bring you along as a courtesy, to help with the handoff. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my stomach drop, that nauseating sensation when you realize something terrible has been happening behind your back and you were too blind to see it. "That's not true," I managed to say, though my voice sounded thin and far away. "None of that is true. I had worked at Sterling Marketing Group for 6 years. I started as a junior coordinator right out of grad school, making copies and scheduling meetings and learning everything I could from the senior strategists. I worked nights and weekends. I studied every campaign, every client pitch, every success and failure. I climbed slowly, deliberately, from coordinator to senior coordinator to associate director to, finally, director of client strategy. The Henley automotive account had been my white whale. Marcus Henley owned 6 car dealerships across the Chicago area, a family business his father had started with one small lot in 1973. Marcus had taken over 15 years ago and grown it steadily. But he knew the business was stale. The average customer was 58 years old. Younger buyers went to the big corporate dealerships with their flashy websites and social media presence. 8 months ago, I pitched Marcus on a complete rebrand. Not just new logos and commercials, but a fundamental shift in how Henley Automotive presented itself. I proposed targeting millennials and Gen Z with authenticity, emphasizing the family history and personal service while modernizing every touchpoint. Digital-first advertising, influencer partnerships, community events, a total website overhaul, even training for the sales staff on connecting with younger buyers. Marcus loved it. He signed a $12 million annual contract on the spot, our biggest client by far. I had been so proud. Douglas, my VP, had congratulated me, taken me out for drinks, told the senior partners I was the future of the firm. That was 8 months ago. 6 months ago, everything started to change. Douglas hired Brad Connolly as senior director, slotting him in the organizational chart right between Douglas and me. Brad was Douglas' former college roommate from Northwestern. They played golf together. Their wives were friends. Brad was charming and smooth, and from day one, I felt him watching me, listening to my ideas in meetings, asking pointed questions about my projects. Small things started happening. In client meetings, Brad would reference strategies I had mentioned to him casually, presenting them as if they were his thoughts. In internal reviews, Douglas would praise Brad's innovative thinking on campaigns I had originated. When I tried to speak up, I was told I was being territorial, that we were all one team. 3 weeks ago, I presented the complete Henley campaign in an internal strategy meeting. Douglas, Brad, and 2 senior partners attended. I walked them through everything. The full creative package, the media buying strategy, the launch timeline, the projected ROI. I had charts, mock-ups, video concepts, social media calendars. It was the best work of my career. Douglas asked detailed questions. He took extensive notes. He seemed enthusiastic, engaged, impressed. At the end, he said the pitch needed some refinement before presenting to the client, but that we'd do it together, as a team. 2 weeks ago, Douglas told me he'd scheduled a presentation lunch with Marcus and his CFO. He said he'd present the campaign, he'd be there to support, and we'd close the deal on the launch timeline. Today, I arrived at the restaurant confident and prepared. I had rehearsed every word. The presentation went perfectly for 20 minutes. Marcus was nodding, smiling, asking good questions. His CFO was engaged. Then Douglas interrupted me. Mid-sentence, he smiled at Marcus and said, "Before we go any further, I need to inform you of a personnel change. Theresa's last day with Sterling Marketing will be Friday. We're letting her go. However, I want to assure you that this won't affect the Henley campaign in any way. Brad and I will be taking over personally, ensuring continuity and excellence." I sat there, frozen, my presentation remote still in my hand as everyone stared at me. Marcus' face had gone blank. His CFO frowned. Douglas continued talking, smooth and professional, explaining transition plans I'd never heard of. Brad, sitting beside Douglas, wouldn't meet my eyes. I don't remember the rest of the lunch. Somehow, I made it through. Appetizers, entrees, dessert, small talk, business pleasantries, all while knowing I'd just been fired in front of the client I'd worked 8 months to win, using work I'd poured my heart into. Now, standing on this patio, Marcus was telling me that Douglas had been lying to him for days. Planning this, setting it up, during your presentation, Marcus continued, I noticed something. You spoke about the campaign with passion, with intimate knowledge of every detail. When Douglas interjected with clarifications, they felt like interruptions, not additions. Like he was trying to control the narrative. Diane stepped forward. I've been in business 30 years, she said, her voice crisp and direct. I've seen enough presentations to know the difference between someone presenting their own work and someone presenting someone else's. You created that campaign. It'd stake my reputation on it. Marcus nodded. I need to know what's really happening here, Teresa, because if Douglas lied to me about who created this work, I have serious concerns about doing business with Sterling Marketing at all. I felt something shift inside me. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, clarifying anger. Douglas hadn't just fired me. Had stolen my work, manipulated the client, and tried to humiliate me into silence by firing me publicly, making me seem unreliable and problematic. He set me up, I said, and as I spoke the words, everything clicked into place. Has been planning this for months. Since he hired Brad, they've been positioning to take credit for my work and push me out. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Not his corporate card, but a personal one with just his name and cell number. I need you to go home and think very carefully about what happened here, he said, pressing the card into my hand. Document everything you can remember. I'm going to do some research on my end. I'll call you in the next 24 hours. Don't talk to anyone at Sterling until we speak again. He glanced back through the restaurant window, where Douglas and Brad were settling the check, laughing about something. I built my business on trust and integrity, Marcus said quietly. If Douglas thinks he can deceive me and get away with it, he's badly mistaken. The next morning, I woke up with that horrible moment of blissful forgetfulness before reality crashed back. I was unemployed. My career was in ruins. My biggest professional achievement had been stolen right in front of me. I made coffee with shaking hands and checked my email. There was a message from Patricia Fleming, Sterling's HR director, with the subject line, "Required meeting, 9 a.m." I arrived at the Sterling offices at 8:45. The building was a sleek glass tower in the Loop, the kind of place that had once made me feel important and successful. Now it felt like enemy territory. Patricia met me in the lobby with a security guard. That's when I knew this was going to be worse than I thought. "Well, need to make this quick," Patricia said, not meeting my eyes as she handed me a manila folder. "I have back-to-back meetings this morning." Inside the folder was my termination paperwork. The reason listed was performance issues and repeated client complaints resulting in loss of confidence. "Client complaints," I said, my voice rising. "I've never had a single client complaint. My performance reviews have been excellent for 6 years." Patricia's face was carefully neutral, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Discomfort, maybe, or guilt. "The documentation is all in your file," she said. "You have the right to appeal, of course. The process is outlined on page 4. The security guard cleared his throat. "I'll need to escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. You'll have 30 minutes. 30 minutes to pack up 6 years of my life." I followed him to my office in a daze, Patricia trailing behind. As I started pulling photos off my desk and emptying drawers, my assistant Sarah appeared in the doorway. She was 26, brilliant and eager, and I'd been mentoring her for 2 years. "Teresa," she said, and her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." "It's okay," I said automatically, though nothing was okay. Sarah glanced at Patricia and the guard, then stepped into the office and started helping me pack. She grabbed my awards off the shelf, wrapped them in newspaper, her movements quick and efficient. When Patricia turned to answer her phone, Sarah leaned close and pressed something small into my hand. "A USB drive. I made copies before they deleted everything," she whispered, so quietly I barely heard her. "Everything." I closed my fist around the drive and met her eyes. She nodded once, then stepped back as Patricia ended her call. 28 minutes later, I was escorted out of the building with 2 boxes of personal items. My access badge confiscated, my keycard deactivated. I stood on the sidewalk in the October cold, watching people stream past me into the building where I no longer worked, and felt completely untethered. At home, I made more coffee and plugged in the USB drive with trembling hands. Sarah had saved everything. My original pitch deck for Henley Automotive, my research files, demographic studies, competitor analyses, my strategy documents, creative briefs, media plans, email chains, showing my work, my ideas, my leadership on the account. And then I found something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Internal emails between Douglas and Brad, going back 6 months. The entire conversation history of their conspiracy. The earliest email was from April, right after Douglas hired Brad. Douglas wrote, "The Henley account is going to be my ticket to senior VP. Once we close the launch, I need you ready to take over management. Well, phase Teresa out after she's done the heavy lifting. No point paying director's salary when we can get the same output from you at senior level." Brad's response, "What if she pushes back?" Douglas, "She won't. I'll document performance issues. Create a paper trail. By the time we move, it'll look justified." I scrolled through months of emails, watching their plan unfold. Douglas had been systematically building a false case against me, creating fake client complaints, noting down concerns about my work in his private files. Had been preparing for this since the beginning. In July, Brad wrote, "Do you really think the client will accept the transition? She has a good relationship with Henley." Douglas responded, "Henley's a car dealer, not a marketing expert. He won't know the difference between her ideas and ours. I'll handle the client management. You just focus on learning her systems." The final email was from last week. Douglas to Brad. I'm going to fire her during the client lunch. It'll demonstrate decisive leadership and make it clear to Henley that Sterling Marketing is in control. She'll be too humiliated to fight back, and even if she tries, who's going to believe her? Brad. That seems harsh. Can't we just let her go quietly? Douglas, this isn't about being nice. It's about sending a message. She needs to understand she's replaceable, and the client needs to see strong management. Trust me. I sat back, feeling sick. The cruelty was intentional. Performative. Douglas had orchestrated my public humiliation as a demonstration of power, thinking it would make him look like a strong leader to Marcus, while simultaneously crushing me so thoroughly I wouldn't dare fight back. But had miscalculated. Marcus hadn't been impressed. Had been suspicious. I kept reading. There were more emails showing Douglas had been lying to the senior partners about my performance for months. Had told them I was difficult to work with, that clients had expressed concerns, that my ideas needed constant supervision and correction. All lies. I found the fake client complaint reports Douglas had created. They were dated and detailed, describing incidents that had never happened. Calls I'd supposedly missed. Presentations that had supposedly gone poorly. A client I'd supposedly offended with an inappropriate joke. All fiction, but documented so carefully they looked real. My phone rang. Marcus Henley. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? He asked. I have some things I need to discuss with you. The coffee shop Marcus chose was in Lincoln Park, neutral territory away from the loop and its business gossip. When I arrived, he was already there with Diane, his CFO, sitting at a corner table away from other customers. Thank you for coming, Marcus said as I sat down. He slid a coffee across the table to me. I had them make you a cappuccino. I remember you ordered that at our first meeting. The kindness in the gesture nearly broke me. I'd been holding myself together with sheer willpower. But small acts of decency kept threatening to crack my composure. I did some research after our conversation. Marcus continued. I called 2 of your former clients, Amy Brennan at Brennan Consulting and James Torres at Midwest Manufacturing. Do you remember them? I nodded. Both were mid-sized clients. I'd worked with 3 years ago, before the Henley account. They couldn't say enough good things about you, Marcus said. Amy said you were the best marketing strategist she'd ever worked with. James said you were creative, responsive, and professional. Both of them were shocked to hear you'd been fired. Diane opened a leather portfolio. I also did some quiet outreach to other people at Sterling Marketing. I have contacts there from previous vendor relationships. I heard rumors about Douglas Hartwell's management style. Nothing concrete, but enough smoke to suggest fire. Marcus leaned forward. I'm a pretty simple guy, Teresa. My father started our first dealership with a $10,000 loan from my grandfather. He taught me that business is built on 2 things: trust and quality work. If you can't trust someone, it doesn't matter how good their work is. And if their work isn't good, trust doesn't help you. He paused, looking at me with those steady gray eyes. I don't trust Douglas Hartwell. I think he lied to me about who created the campaign strategy. I think he fired you to take credit for your work. And I won't do business with people who operate that way. My heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm pulling the Henley Automotive account from Sterling Marketing, Marcus said. Effective immediately. The contract has a termination clause. We're within the first year, so they'll owe us a partial refund of fees already paid. About $2 million. Diane nodded. It'll be painful for them financially, but more importantly, it'll raise questions among the senior partners about what went wrong. They'll investigate, and when they do, they're going to find out Douglas lied to a major client. Marcus continued. I still need the campaign. I still need the rebrand. My dealerships are struggling with younger demographics. And what you presented yesterday was exactly what we need. I've already committed resources to this. I've told my managers we're doing it. I can't just walk away. He took a breath. So here's what I want to propose. I want to hire you, Teresa, as an independent consultant. I want you to execute the full campaign you designed. Everything you showed me yesterday. Website redesign, social media strategy, video content, print advertising, media buying plan, launch event, all of it. I stared at him, not quite believing what I was hearing. You want me to do it alone? Is that a problem? Diane asked, and there was a challenge in her voice. You said you created the strategy. Can you execute it? It's work that normally takes a team of 6 people, I said slowly. Designers, copywriters, media buyers, project managers. It'd need to hire freelancers, coordinate vendors, manage production timelines. So hire them, Marcus said. It'll pay your consulting fee plus expenses. You'll have complete creative control. No Douglas looking over your shoulder. No Brad stealing your ideas. Just you, doing the work you love. How long? I asked. 8 weeks, Diane said. We need to launch before Christmas. The fourth quarter is critical for auto sales. 8 weeks. Alone. To do work that should take a team months. If I fail, I said quietly, it'll be done in this industry. Everyone will say I couldn't deliver without Sterling's infrastructure. It'll be blackballed. And if you succeed, Marcus said, you'll prove you're exactly as good as I think you are. You'll have a major campaign in your portfolio with your name on it, not Sterling's. And you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you beat them at their own game. Diane was watching me carefully. I'm the CFO, I'm risk-averse by nature. I told Marcus this is a bad idea. You're unproven as an independent operator. You have no team, no infrastructure, no track record of managing projects this size solo. If you fail, we lose time and money, and we have to start over with another firm. Then why are you here? I asked. Because Marcus has good instincts about people, she said. And because I hate seeing talented people get crushed by corporate politics. But I need to know you understand what you're taking on. This isn't just about revenge on Douglas. This is a real business project, with real stakes. We're betting on you. Can you deliver? I thought about the USB drive sitting on my desk at home. The emails showing Douglas conspiracy. The fake complaints. The systematic destruction of my reputation. I thought about sitting in that restaurant yesterday. Being fired in front of a client. Being told I was replaceable. Douglas had bet it'd be too broken to fight back. Had miscalculated. Yes, I said. I can deliver. Marcus smiled and extended his hand. Then we have a deal. As we shook hands, Diane added one more thing. You should also know that when we pull the account, Sterling's contract requires them to refund $2 million in fees. That's going to devastate their quarterly numbers. Douglas was probably counting on the Henley revenue to justify his promotion to senior VP. This will tank his career trajectory. I felt a fierce satisfaction at that. Not just the money, though that mattered, but the idea that Douglas' scheme would blow up in his face, that his calculated cruelty would cost him everything he'd been maneuvering for. Good, I said. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling like I'd just bet my entire career on a single hand of poker, terrified, exhilarated, and determined not to lose. The next 3 weeks were the hardest I'd ever worked in my life. I set up a home office in my apartment's second bedroom, converted my dining table into a war room, with timeline charts and project plans covering every surface. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, fueled by coffee and determination and the burning need to prove I could do this. I hired a freelance graphic designer named Paolo who'd done beautiful work for one of my previous clients. I brought on Maya, a copywriter I'd worked with at an agency job years ago. I contracted with a media buying firm run by a woman named Jennifer, who understood the Chicago market inside and out. For video production, I found a small studio called Bright Eye Creative that was hungry for work and willing to move fast. Every morning, I sent Marcus and Diane a progress update. Every Friday, we had a video call to review the week's work. They were impressed. The campaign was coming together beautifully, better than I'd even imagined when I was working within Sterling's bureaucratic constraints. Without Douglas controlling every decision and Brad second-guessing my choices, I could work purely on instinct and creativity. The Henley rebrand was going to be spectacular. Bold, but authentic. Modern, but rooted in family values. Exactly what Marcus needed. The website redesign was almost complete. The social media strategy was mapped out for 6 months. Wedge shot 3 video commercials with real Henley customers telling their stories. The print ads were gorgeous. Full-page spreads that would run in Chicago Magazine and the Tribune. The launch event was planned for the first Saturday in December at the newest Henley dealership, with food trucks, live music, and test drives. I was exhausted but energized. Every night, I fell asleep within minutes, too tired to even worry. Every morning, I woke up excited to keep building. 3 days before my big presentation to Marcus and Diane, where I'd show them the complete campaign ready for launch approval, everything fell apart. I woke up to 17 missed calls and a dozen frantic emails. My bank account had been frozen. When I tried to buy coffee that morning, both my credit cards were declined. Confused and panicking, I called the bank. "There's a legal hold on your accounts, ma'am," the customer service representative said. "A court order came through yesterday afternoon. You'll need to contact the law firm listed in the order for more information." The law firm was Brenner, Walsh, and Associates, corporate litigation specialists. Expensive and aggressive. I called them immediately. A paralegal explained that Sterling Marketing Group had filed an emergency lawsuit against me for breach of contract and theft of intellectual property. They claimed I'd stolen proprietary client information, trade secrets, and confidential strategy documents when I left the company. They'd requested and received a temporary injunction, freezing my assets until the case could be heard. "This is insane," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't steal anything. They fired me." "You'll need to retain your own attorney, ma'am," the paralegal said, her tone professionally detached. "The preliminary hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from today." I hung up and immediately called the only attorney I knew, a law school friend named Tom who practiced family law. He listened to my story and gave me the name of an employment attorney named Rachel Simmons. Rachel agreed to see me that afternoon. I walked to her office in the South Loop, too anxious to take the train. When I explained what happened, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "This is a slap suit," she said. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you and drain your resources. The legal claims are weak. They won't win on merit. Then why did a judge freeze my accounts? Because at this early stage, judges err on the side of caution. Sterling claimed you stole trade secrets, which is serious. They provided documentation. I'm sure. Fake or exaggerated, but enough to get the emergency order. It'll take a few weeks to sort out, but ultimately you'll win. A few weeks. I felt the panic rising. I can't wait a few weeks. I owe freelancers $12,000 by Friday. I have printing costs due. I'm supposed to pay for media buys next week? If I can't deliver, I lose the client, and my reputation is destroyed. Rachel's expression was sympathetic but realistic. I understand, but this is what slap suits do. They're not meant to win in court. They're meant to win by making it impossible for you to function until you give up. I left her office feeling like I was drowning. Even if I eventually won the lawsuit, it wouldn't matter. By the time my assets were unfrozen, the Henley campaign would be dead. It'd miss deadlines. Freelancers would quit. The launch event would be canceled. Marcus would lose faith in me. Douglas had calculated this perfectly. The lawsuit didn't need to be legitimate. It just needed to arrive at exactly the right moment to cripple me when I was most vulnerable. That evening, things got worse. Rachel called to tell me that Sterling had also sent a threatening letter to Henley Automotive. They claimed I'd forged client lists and stolen confidential campaign strategies, and they threatened to sue Marcus' company if he continued working with me. They accused him of benefiting from stolen intellectual property. An hour later, Diane called. "I need to be honest with you," she said, her voice tight. "Marcus is getting cold feet. The legal risk is significant. If Sterling can prove you stole their materials, we could be liable. Our attorneys are advising us to suspend the contract until this is resolved." "I didn't steal anything," I said, but I could hear the desperation in my own voice. "They're lying. They fired me, and now they're trying to destroy me so I can't compete with them." "I believe you," Diane said, and she sounded like she meant it. "But belief isn't the same as proof. Marcus built his business on being careful. He won't take legal risks that could endanger his dealerships." After she hung up, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by work I couldn't finish, looking at invoices I couldn't pay, knowing that everything I'd fought for over the past 3 weeks was slipping away. Douglas had won. Had stolen my work, destroyed my reputation, and now he was using the legal system to crush me so thoroughly I'd never be able to challenge him. I'd never felt so alone or so defeated. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah, my former assistant. "I have something you need to see. Can I come over?" Sarah arrived 30 minutes later, looking nervous and excited at the same time. She kept glancing over her shoulder as if she expected someone to be following her. "I was fired yesterday," she told me, as soon as I let her inside. "Douglas found out I helped you. He called me into his office and accused me of betraying the company. He was furious." "Sarah, I'm so sorry," I said, feeling guilty. "You didn't deserve that. Don't apologize," she said quickly. "What he did to you was wrong. What he's doing now is worse. And I have proof." She pulled out her phone and opened a voice memo file. "Last Tuesday, I was working late, finishing expense reports. Around 9 at night, Douglas and Brad came back to the office. They'd been out drinking with clients. They were drunk, talking loudly. They didn't know I was there. I was in the copy room with the door mostly closed." She held up her phone. "I recorded them." She pressed play. Douglas' voice came through the speaker, slurred but clear. "To crushing Teresa, that lawsuit was a stroke of genius." Brad's voice, less confident. "Do you really think it'll hold up in court?" Douglas laughed. "Doesn't matter if it holds up. It just needs to strangle her for a few weeks. By the time a judge throws it out, she'll be bankrupt, and the Henley deal will be dead. The client will come crawling back to us, and we'll be heroes for salvaging the account." "But the intellectual property theft claims," Brad said. "We know she didn't actually steal anything. Those complaints you filed were fabricated." "Who cares?" Douglas sounded annoyed. "She can't prove they're fake. I documented everything carefully. Dates, times, details. It looks legitimate. That's all that matters." "I don't know, man," Brad said. "This feels like it's gone too far. What if she fights back?" "With what?" "She has no money, no job, and a lawsuit around her neck. She'll fold. Trust me. In a month, she'll be working retail somewhere, and we'll be running the Henley account like we planned. That $12 million contract is going to get me promoted to senior VP, and you're going to be the new director. Everything is working exactly like I said it would." There was the sound of glasses clinking. More laughter. "Marcus Henley is too stupid to know the difference between her ideas and ours," Douglas continued. "Car dealers aren't marketing experts. We'll recycle her strategies for other clients and make a fortune. This is how you get ahead in business, Brad. You take credit, you eliminate competition, and you don't lose sleep over it." Welcome to the real world. The recording ended. I sat there, stunned. Sarah had captured Douglas confessing to everything. The fake complaints, the deliberately fabricated lawsuit, the plan to steal my work and pass it off as his own. All of it, in his own voice. There's more, Sarah said. She showed me her phone screen, which displayed a series of screenshots. Before they fired me, I took pictures of everything I could access. The fake client complaint documents Douglas created. Look at the file properties. He created them after the dates he claims the incidents occurred. The metadata proves he backdated them. She swiped through more images. Here is the timeline of when you were supposedly missing calls and making mistakes. Cross-reference it with your actual calendar and email logs. You were in meetings with other clients or on approved vacation days. The complaints are impossible. How did you get all this? I asked. I've been Douglas' assistant's backup for 6 months, Sarah said. When she's out, I handle his correspondence. I have access to his files. I knew something was wrong when he started building a case against you. You were the best manager I ever had. You taught me everything. So I started documenting things, just in case. She sat back, looking at me seriously. You can use this, Teresa. You can take this to the senior partners. You can prove Douglas is lying. You can save yourself. I looked at the phone in her hand, this precious evidence that could change everything. But a lawsuit could take months, even with proof of Douglas fraud. I needed faster action. The senior partners? I said slowly, thinking out loud. If I go directly to them with this evidence, bypass Douglas completely, they'll have to investigate immediately. More than that, Sarah said. Sterling is a privately held firm. The partners own it. If Douglas has been lying to clients, creating fake complaints, filing fraudulent lawsuits, it exposes the firm to massive liability. They'll fire him to protect themselves. She was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Sterling's reputation, its legal exposure, its relationships with clients. The partners would act swiftly and decisively to contain the damage. I pulled out my laptop and started composing an email. Sarah helped me organize the evidence, the recording, the screenshots, a detailed timeline of Douglas' conspiracy, copies of my original work files proving Id created the Henley campaign. At 10:30 that night, I sent the email to all 3 senior partners, Robert Brennan, James Walsh, and Margaret Sterling, the founder's daughter who ran the firm. The subject line read, Urgent. Evidence of fraud and theft by VP Douglas Hartwell. In the body, I wrote, I am requesting an emergency meeting to present evidence that Douglas Hartwell has engaged in systematic fraud, including fabricating client complaints, filing a fraudulent lawsuit to cover up theft of intellectual property, and deliberately destroying my career to take credit for work I created. I have audio recordings of Douglas admitting to these actions. This matter requires immediate attention to protect Sterling Marketing Group from legal liability and reputational damage. I attached everything and hit send. Sarah left around midnight. I lay awake the rest of the night, my mind racing, wondering if Id just saved myself or made everything worse. At 6 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Margaret Sterling. We need to meet today, she said, her voice tight and controlled. 9 o'clock, conference room B. Bring your attorney. I arrived at Sterling Marketing's offices with Rachel Simmons at 8:45. This time, no security guard met me in the lobby. Instead, Margaret Sterling herself came down to escort us upstairs. She was in her mid-50s, elegant and sharp, with steel gray hair cut in a sleek bob. She'd founded the firm with her late father 30 years ago and had built it into one of Chicago's most respected marketing agencies. Thank you for coming, she said as we rode the elevator. Her voice was professionally courteous, but I could see tension around her eyes. The other partners are already here. We've been reviewing your materials since 5 this morning. Conference room B was Sterling's largest meeting space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Robert Brennan and James Walsh sat on one side of the long table, both looking grim. Patricia Fleming, the HR director, sat beside them, nervously clutching a legal pad. A man I didn't recognize sat at the end, probably corporate counsel. Douglas was conspicuously absent. Margaret gestured for Rachel and me to sit. She remained standing. "Let me begin by apologizing," Margaret said directly. "What I've learned over the past 3 hours is unconscionable. You were treated abusively by someone in a position of power, and the systems we had in place to protect employees failed you completely. I hadn't expected that. An apology. Accountability." Robert Brennan leaned forward. "We listened to the recording you provided. All of it. We reviewed the documentation. We pulled Douglas personnel files and computer logs. The evidence is overwhelming. We also discovered things we should have caught earlier," James Walsh added. He looked angry. "Douglas has a history. At his previous firm, there were similar allegations of taking credit for subordinates' work. He was forced to resign, but they kept it quiet. We never did a thorough background check. That's on us." Margaret sat down, her expression severe. "Over the past 6 hours, we've identified a pattern. 3 employees quit in the past 18 months, citing hostile work environment issues related to Douglas. We have documentation of their complaints. We dismissed them as personality conflicts. We were wrong." Patricia, the HR director, spoke up, her voice shaky. "I need to take responsibility for my role in this. Douglas came to me with performance complaints about you. I didn't investigate thoroughly. I trusted his judgment because of his position. I failed to do my due diligence and am deeply sorry." The corporate counsel cleared his throat. "From a legal perspective, Sterling Marketing Group is exposed to significant liability. The lawsuit filed against you was done using company resources and company attorneys based on false information Mr. Hartwell provided. We're withdrawing that lawsuit immediately. Your assets will be unfrozen by end of business today. Additionally," Margaret said, "we're issuing a formal public statement, clearing your name. We'll provide reference letters confirming your excellent work here. We'll recommend you to clients who might need your services. And we're prepared to offer a settlement for wrongful termination." Rachel, my attorney, spoke for the first time. "What kind of settlement?" $200,000, James said. "Plus we'll cover your legal fees from this matter." Rachel didn't hesitate. $300,000, given the reputational damage and emotional distress, plus legal fees, plus a 1-year consulting contract where Teresa has first right of refusal on appropriate projects. The partners exchanged glances. Margaret nodded. "Agreed," she said. 300,000, legal fees covered, and the consulting arrangement. I felt dizzy. This was more than I'd hoped for, more than I'd imagined possible when I sent that email last night. "What about Douglas?" I asked. "Terminated this morning for cause," Robert said flatly. "Effective, immediately. Brad Connolly as well, for conspiracy and participation in the fraud. They'll both be escorted out this afternoon. We're also conducting a full internal review," Margaret added. "We're bringing in outside consultants to audit our HR practices and management oversight. What happened to you can never happen again." She looked at me directly, and I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "I built this firm on the principle that good work speaks for itself. I failed to protect that principle. And I failed you personally. I hope you'll accept our settlement. But more than that, I hope you'll give us the chance to prove we're better than the worst thing that happened here." My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Just got a call from Margaret Sterling. She told me everything. I'm keeping you on the Henley project, and I want to talk about expanding the scope. Call me." Rachel squeezed my hand under the table, a silent signal. This was the moment to make my decision. "I appreciate the apology," I said slowly. "And I appreciate the settlement. I'll accept your terms." Margaret smiled with visible relief. "However," I continued, I won't be coming back to Sterling, not even as a consultant. The smile faded. I learned something these past few weeks. I said, working independently, without the politics, and the credit stealing, and the constant need to prove myself. I remembered why I got into marketing in the first place. I love the creative work. I love solving problems for clients. I love building campaigns that actually make a difference. I looked around the table at these powerful people who, just days ago, had let me be destroyed to protect their own comfort. Sterling is a good firm, but it enabled Douglas for years because nobody wanted to look too closely. That's a culture problem, not just a Douglas problem. I don't want to be part of that system anymore. James started to object, but Margaret held up a hand to stop him. What do you want? Teresa, she asked. I'm starting my own consultancy, I said. The Henley account is staying with me. I'm going to finish that campaign, and then I'm going to build my own client base. On my terms, with people I choose to work with. That's ambitious, Robert said, and it didn't sound like a compliment. So was landing a $12 million account when I was 30 years old, I replied. I did it once. I can do it again. Margaret studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I respect that, she said. Keep the settlement. Keep the reference letters. And when you need support, call me directly. You earned the right to build something of your own. As Rachel and I stood to leave, Patricia caught my arm. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I'm glad you didn't let them break you. You're going to be very successful. Outside on Michigan Avenue. Rachel turned to me with a huge grin. That, she said, was the most satisfying client meeting I've ever had. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone rang again. Marcus, I want to triple the contract, he said as soon as I answered. Not just the rebrand. I want you handling all 6 dealerships' marketing. Full service, $18 million a year. Are you interested? I looked up at the Sterling Marketing Building, at the windows where I'd spent 6 years climbing a ladder that led nowhere good. Yes, I said. I'm very interested. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, a sun-filled space in a renovated warehouse in the West Loop. The sign on the door read Carson Creative Strategies, named after my grandmother who'd taught me that women could build anything if they were brave enough to try. I had a team now, 4 people I'd hired carefully, looking for talent and integrity more than impressive resumes. Sarah was my operations manager, brilliant at keeping projects on track and clients happy. Paolo, the graphic designer, had come on full-time. Maya, the copywriter, split her time between us and freelance work. And I'd hired a young account manager named Jordan, fresh out of college, eager and honest and ready to learn. We had 8 clients. Henley Automotive was still the biggest, but we'd picked up 5 referrals from Marcus and 2 from former Sterling clients who'd heard about what happened and wanted to work with me directly. Revenue was approaching $2 million in our first year, which was better than I'd dared hope. The Henley campaign had launched in December, right on schedule despite everything. It exceeded every performance target. Sales at all 6 dealerships were up 37% compared to the previous year. Foot traffic from buyers under 40 had increased by 52%. The social media campaign had gone semi-viral, with the family story videos getting shared thousands of times. Marcus sent me a bottle of champagne with a note that said, "Best business decision I ever made was trusting my instincts about you." Douglas and Brad had both struggled after being fired. Word spread in Chicago's marketing community. Douglas eventually found a junior position at a small firm downstate, a humiliating come-down for someone who'd been a VP at a prestigious agency. Brad had left marketing entirely and was managing his family's restaurant in Evanston. Neither had tried to contact me. Sterling Marketing Group had gone through significant changes. Patricia had been demoted. 2 other VPs had been let go after the internal audit revealed additional misconduct. Margaret had personally called me twice to update me on their reforms and to repeat her apology. I forgave her, eventually. Not because what happened was okay, but because holding on to anger was exhausting and I had better things to do with my energy. On this particular morning, I was reviewing a new pitch for a potential client, a chain of fitness studios looking to rebrand for Gen Z. It was exactly the kind of creative challenge I loved. My desk phone buzzed. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. "Marcus is here for your 10 o'clock. Send him in." Marcus entered with his usual friendly smile, carrying 2 coffees. Had become more than a client over these months. He was a mentor, a friend, someone who'd believed in me when I had trouble believing in myself. "Thought you might need caffeine," he said, handing me a cup. "I know you've been working late on the new pitch." "You're too good to me," I said. "You're the one who increased my sales by 37%, he replied. "I'm just protecting my investment." We talked through some upcoming campaigns, discussed expansion plans for his dealerships, reviewed quarterly numbers. Business was good, better than good. As Marcus stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "That day at the restaurant, when Douglas fired you in front of me, my first instinct was to stay out of it. It wasn't my business. Easier to just accept the transition and move on." "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because I saw your face," he said simply. "I saw shock and hurt and confusion. And I saw Douglas' face, and I saw satisfaction. He was enjoying humiliating you. That told me everything I needed to know about both of you." He smiled. "My instinct to talk to you outside was the best business decision I made that year. But more than that, it was the right thing to do. Sometimes those are the same." After he left, I walked to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. I thought about the woman it'd been 6 months ago, sitting in that restaurant, being fired in front of a client, feeling like her world was ending. She couldn't have imagined standing here now, running her own firm, financially stable, professionally respected, genuinely happy. The journey from that moment to this one had been brutal. There were nights I'd cried myself to sleep, days I'd wanted to give up, hours when the fear of failure was so overwhelming I could barely breathe. But I'd learned something important through all of it. Betrayal, as painful as it is, reveals truth. It shows you who people really are beneath their professional masks. Douglas had seemed like a mentor, a supporter, someone who valued my work. The betrayal exposed him as petty, cruel, and willing to destroy others for personal advancement. But the betrayal also revealed something else. My own strength. I'd learned I could survive humiliation and come back fighting. I could work 18-hour days and deliver excellence under impossible pressure. I could bet on myself and win. I could build something from nothing using nothing but my skills and my determination. When someone tries to take credit for your work, the truth always surfaces eventually. It might take time. It might require patience and strategy and evidence, but quality work speaks for itself. And authentic relationships recognize it. Standing up for yourself is terrifying. There were so many moments when I wanted to just accept defeat, take a quiet settlement, slink away. Fighting back meant risking total failure. It meant being vulnerable and exposed. It meant trusting that justice would prevail, when I had no guarantee it would. But not fighting back would have meant accepting that powerful people could destroy me without consequences. It would have meant internalizing the lie that I was replaceable, mediocre, disposable. I refused to believe that lie. Your reputation isn't built on what others say about you. It's built on your actions, your integrity, your consistency, over time. Douglas tried to destroy my reputation with fake complaints and public humiliation. But the people who actually worked with me, would seen my work firsthand, knew the truth. That mattered more than any lie he could tell. Sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. Getting fired felt like total defeat. but it freed me from a system that would never have truly valued me. It forced me to bet on myself. It led me to build something I actually owned, where nobody could take credit for my ideas or diminish my contributions. The people who believe in you will show up when it matters most. Marcus could have walked away. Sarah could have stayed silent to protect her own job. Rachel could have told me the lawsuit was too risky to fight. But they showed up. They took risks to support me. Those are the relationships that matter. Building something of your own, on your own terms, is worth more than climbing someone else's ladder. At Sterling, I would always have been limited by people above me, competing for scraps of recognition, vulnerable to office politics. Here, in my own firm, I set the values. I choose the clients. I define success. That freedom is worth everything I went through to get here. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone took credit for your work? Where you were betrayed by someone you trusted professionally? How did you respond? Did you fight back, or did you walk away? More importantly, if you're in that situation now, what's stopping you from standing up for yourself? I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It's not. It's terrifying and exhausting, and there are no guarantees. But I will tell you this: you are more capable than you think. Your work has value. Your contributions matter. And nobody, no matter how powerful or connected or manipulative, has the right to diminish you. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share your experiences. Tell me how you handled workplace betrayal. Let's support each other through these difficult situations, because knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And if you found value in this story, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about overcoming workplace challenges and building careers on your own terms. Share this video with anyone who might be going through something similar, because sometimes people need to hear that they're not crazy, they're not weak, and they can survive this. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about, maybe even some courage to face your own challenges. Remember, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. It's living well, with integrity and purpose, proving that you were always exactly as good as you believed you were. And sometimes, the people who fire you are actually setting you free. Take care of yourselves. Stand up for yourselves. And never let anyone convince you that you're less than you are.